everybody out there in Rutherford County. My name is Miss Chicaro and I teach English at Riverdale High School. Today we are going to be talking about The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury, and the essential question for our unit, what is the meaning of freedom? I wanted to come on here on the slide and introduce myself really quick before we get into the content of today's lesson. So here we go. So for today, you're going to have read The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury, and we're going to go through two different sections of questions. The first set of questions will just be about comprehension. What did you understand from the text? What did you pull from it? And the second set of questions will be standard-based text questions. And I'll do a mini lesson over each standard before I give you the opportunity to actually utilize that skill. So let's start with the comprehension questions. Comprehension question number 1 says, what activity does Leonard Mead engage in during the evening? So on this slide, I have put the text that you could find the answer in. I want you to go back through and look for words that have to do with activity and what he is doing in that evening. So I'll give you a second to answer this question before we move on. The correct answer for this question is he walks alone along the empty streets of the city he lives in and looks at the buildings. A couple of the lines that stood out to me that made this answer obvious, and I will circle them or underline them for you here, is to put your feet upon the buckling concrete walk, to step over grassy seams and make your way, hands in pockets, through the silences. That was what Mr. Leonard Mead most dearly loved to do. And then in paragraph 2, sometimes he would walk for hours and miles, return only at midnight to his house. Comprehension question number 2, what do the other people in the city do during the evening? I provided the text for you again. This answer is not as explicitly stated as the first one. You're going to have to do a little bit more close reading. I'll give you a few minutes to answer this one. The answer is that everyone stays home and watches television. As stated previously, the answer to this question is not as explicit or stated outright as the answer for number 1. If you notice here in paragraph 5, Mead is whispering to the houses that he's moving around or walking by. He's not talking to any person, so he's all by himself. And he's asking them what they're watching, channel 4, channel 7, channel 9. And then in paragraph 7, he's continuing to talk to the houses, not people. And he is asking what's on at that particular time period. If you wanted to know the review here with the number, this is telling you in a footnote that a review is a musical show. We don't really have those anymore. So you can also tell by this word that this might be a dated text. Comprehension question 3, what is unusual about the police car that stops Mead? Again, the answer is here in the text I have provided for you, so do some close reading. All right, the answer to question 3 is that there's no one in the police car. You can see in paragraph 61 that as he had expected, there was no one in the front seat, no one in the car at all. This is where the suspense builds up for me when I'm reading it, because in our society, we do not have self-driven police cars yet. And so this really piqued my curiosity as to why and how there were no humans in the car. Question number 4, where does the voice say the police car will be taking Mead? All right, the answer to number 4 is that the voice tells Mead that the police car is going to take him to a hospital called the Psychiatric Center for Research on Regressive Tendencies. For me, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, the voice is controlling the car from some area. You can't see the human that's actually in control. And the personification that the car is hesitating gives me, it makes me question what is going on in this society, that it seems the car has more of a personality and a character than any of the people in their respective homes. So that's curious to me. Also, the key word in the hospital title, regressive. Regressive means going backwards. So what about Meade is so regressive or backwards in his society? It's very interesting. The final question that we'll pull up on the Playposit is to ask you to write a 3-sentence summary of the text. So go ahead and take a second and write a 3-sentence summary, 3 or 4-sentence summary of the story. All right, so your answers for this question are going to vary depending on your perspective and your writing style. However, you need to at least have the 3 main points of this short story. 1, Leonard Meade is walking the deserted city streets by himself. 2, he gets pulled over by an unmanned police car, and that his behavior is deemed so strange and so irregular that he is arrested and taken to a psychiatric center for regressive behavior. Okay, the next set of questions are text-based and standards-based. So I'm going to be giving you a mini lesson over what standard is being questioned. I'm also not going to be providing you with the text on the screen for these questions. So if you need to go back and look at the story, you should pull that up in your online textbook, either in another tab on your computer or in another tab on your phone. For me, instead of bouncing back and forth, sometimes I like to use the text on my phone while I'm answering questions on the computer so that I can type better, but I know that might be different for you all, that you might type better on your phone than you do on your laptop. So do whatever is comfortable for you, but just know that I will not be providing you with the text on the next set of slides. All right, so question number 1 is going to be testing your skill of analyzing what a text says explicitly and then drawing inferences, and then being able to support your interpretation of that text by citing and synthesizing evidence from the story. So question number 1 has 2 parts. I want you to make sure that you are actively answering both parts of this question in your answer. So what I expect to see on the Playposit answer is at least 1 sentence answering part A and then another sentence answering part B. You can do that with a compound complex sentence as long as you are actively answering both parts. So number 1 is asking, why does Leonard Meade wear sneakers when he walks outside in the evening? And then it wants you to analyze, in what way does his fear seem abnormal? The answer to this question is that Meade wears sneakers so that the dogs won't bark at him and draw attention from people in their homes. So that is the explicit why he's wearing sneakers. Analyzing this is being able to see that he's wearing sneakers because he is afraid to draw attention to himself, right? Some might say that this is an abnormal fear because Meade shouldn't be afraid to walk the streets if he's not doing anything criminal. However, this might be an outdated reading of the text. Text-based question 2 is asking you to determine the meaning of words and phrases as they're used in a text, which includes figurative and connotative meanings, and then it wants you to analyze the impact of that specific word choice on meaning and tone. So number 2 is focusing on description. It wants you to analyze how the narrator describes the people he sees inside the house, and then he wants you to determine the meaning from those words to compare and contrast how the description of the people in their homes contrast with Meade's impression of the police car. So the answer for this one is that he describes the people in their homes as gray phantoms, and that the description of the gray houses and gray people contrast with the fierce white cone of light used by the police car to illuminate him. So this color language is really important here. The phantom is gray. These people in their homes are zombie, dead, not really living, stuck inside watching their television instead of experiencing life and seeing things on the outside. Whereas the police officer is very cold, a fierce white cone of light. So he is also very sterile. The car, anyway. I don't know why I'm using the he, but the car is very sterile, very technological, and forceful all in of itself. Question number 3 goes back to the standard RKID 1, which is asking you to analyze what the text says explicitly and draw inferences from it. So Bradbury does not say a lot about the society that Meade lives in explicitly. He gives you a lot of hints, and then he wants you to infer what the society is like based on those hints. So question number 3 is asking you to infer, why does the voice from the police car fail to understand Mr. Meade's reason for walking at night, and then take that failure of understanding to draw conclusions. Based on his interaction with the police car, what can you conclude about the society in which Mr. Meade lives? So the voice from the police car does not understand Meade's explanation that he's out for air and to see and just to walk, because the answer is not routine. Everybody else in that society is literally in their homes watching television. So the voice does not understand Meade because his behavior is just so strange. You can then conclude, based on the police officer not having any actually person in the car, the police car not having a person in the car, and the white light, that very sterile light, that Meade lives in a highly technological society, and it expects people to strictly conform to expectations. All right, question number 4, our kid again, analyzing what that text says explicitly and drawing inferences. So it wants you to interpret, what does the bright lights in Meade's house show about Meade? So take that description of his home and compare his home to everybody else's home that he was describing as he was walking. What does that juxtaposition, those opposites, say about Meade as a human? So Meade's house is super bright. It's lit up, every light in the house is on, and that symbolizes how different he is from everyone else in society. He is bright, he is boisterous, he wants to go out and see the world and explore, while everybody else is dim and cut off and zombified into their viewing screens. So his light in his house shows how much of an outsider he is to the rest of his society. All right, question number 5 deals with theme. The standard is to determine multiple themes or central ideas of a text or texts and analyze their development and then provide a critical summary. I'm not asking you to provide a critical summary here, but if I were, it would be asking you to take a summary like you did in one of the previous questions of the text and then provide your own viewpoint of it. What was effective, what was ineffective, what was the author trying to say? However, this question is just asking you to analyze the theme of freedom, which is our entire unit question. What is the meaning of freedom in this specific text? What have you learned about the meaning of freedom by reading The Pedestrian? Again, answers here are going to vary based on your writing style and your perspective and what you are bringing into the story. But based on this theme, you have to think about what Bradbury was trying to get across. So one answer might be that freedom shouldn't mean that everyone's expected to behave in the same way. Though atypical behavior sometimes is interpreted as dangerous. So as we close up our lesson for today, I wanted to give you guys a chance to create some connections between the pedestrian, what our current society is going through when it comes to freedom. I found a lot of parallels when I was reading this to modern society, what we're seeing in the news, what's happening globally and in the United States. So I want you to take a second and make those connections for yourself and think about explicitly what it means to be free in our society compared to what it means to be free in the pedestrian.